Hello, friends and YouTubers and liberty lovers and landlords everywhere. Welcome back to our series on landlording in New Hampshire. I'm Mark Warden with Porcupine Real Estate. Back again. We're very glad to have Brittany Ping with us from Leisure Commercial. Good morning, Brittany. How are you?
Good. I'm well, Mark. How are you?
What we're going to do is a few different series, short videos on some of the pain points for landlords, as well as some of the fantastic benefits of being rental property owner or investment property owner, particularly here in the Manchester area and other parts of New Hampshire. So one of the things we hear a lot about is what goes on when you and I bring together, let's say, a new investor. Somebody buys an investment property, a 3 or 4 unit building in Manchester, for example, but they live out of state. They want to be, sort of passive income. What happens next? What kind of paperwork do you get involved with them, and how do you bring rents up to market and things like that? Walk us through the process.
Yes. So when we get a new property, we ask for all the existing leases. So that way we know the terms and conditions. So somebody under a lease, we can change their policies with 30 days notice. So we can change things like late fees. We can change things like pet policies, parking, all those kind of fun parts that are a big part of our lease. I think we'll do another one here talking about leases, you and I, but we have a nice, large, robust lease. It's about 10 to 12 pages. We can change a lot of that. The policies with 30 days notice here in New Hampshire, the terms and conditions you can't. So that's what amount of rent that they pay. And if their lease is through a certain time frame. If not, we can change rent with a 30 days notice minimum, 60 days notice if they are subsidized housing. So if they have like New Hampshire housing or Manchester City housing or something similar, you do need to require 60 days notice. But really what we start with is we say, where are you at, right? When could we start to move rents, and what does market rents actually look like? I will say that it probably takes about a year or more is what we like to see if we're really drastically moving rents. We like to move in a little bit at a time with as much notice as possible, trying to get to that goal for the investor. So some investors, it's right, like, how can I get to market rents as fast as possible? Well, I don't care about turnover, right? That's a totally different strategy. If somebody says, I need this to stay occupied, I need it to move towards market. So that would be a different strategy. So it's just knowing what the owner's looking for. I would say I have kind of the in-between. My goal is always to try to get you to about 85% to market. That's going to be my rental recommendation. How do we get that far? The owner might say, oh, that's a little too aggressive for me. Or, hey, I need to be more aggressive because, my mortgage is coming due and I get to pay market rent mortgage. It's a brand new investment. I ask the investor what their plan is, and we can walk them through. And again, I've, worked with some properties where over a year we've done $500, like literally $500 a month rent increases, and tenants stay. They have enough communication. It's consistent. It's not all at once. We do it in phases. That's going to bring some new maintenance costs. They might say like, oh, I would really like to see maybe my bathroom floor is in a lot worse shape than I've been telling you, or something similar. But planning, because of the communication, it opens up those lines where the tenants say, I'm happy to stay for this amount of rent. Can you do this thing for me? And it really has worked out. I would say about 90% of our units have stayed on, even through aggressive rental changes that we've seen in the past few years in the market.
That's great. Is it true that you can build in an automatic rent increase at the renewal? That way you can give the people, if they do sign a 1-year lease, you can put in the lease that it's going to go up so many percent on the 13th month, for example, if they choose to stay. That way they're not caught off guard with that sort of thing. It also helps build the value for your owners.
Yeah, so that's a thing that you can do. We do that for commercial leases, not necessarily residential. So you can state like, hey, at month 13, if you're in holdover, or you can have an option to request a lease at 3% or 5% increase, something like that. It's not as common. I'd say maybe I have like 1 or 2 landlords that do that for their residential leases. That option to renew at the different lease rate. You just have to be on top of it from a property management standpoint, because mostly what happens is you'll say like, oh, month 13, you're going to pay this rent. And without that reminder to the residents, like, hey, here's your notice of change in rent, or that management where it's automatically going to go in like a property management system, it might just fall through the cracks. And so you had an opportunity maybe to raise rents on month 13 and you didn't act on it. You didn't reminder. And now it's this big issue, or maybe it's month 16 and you're like, oh, I should have been charging you, $100 more the past 3 months and I forgot. Do you think you can pay me back this rent? So it's not my favorite. It's something you can do if you have a property management information system that helps keep track of that, or if you're just putting reminders in your calendar, or have a true property manager that will assist you as well.
Well, I know you guys use a humane approach, a sort of a tough love approach to management with your tenants. And I know a lot of your tenants, and they're all very pleased with the way it works. But once in a while, you have somebody who's a bad actor and just won't pay his bills. So walk us through the eviction process. And of course, we have a lot of investors from out of other states and some of the liberal states where they're very tenant oriented, and people can really drag it on and really harm the landlord for many months. But what is the time frame here in New Hampshire if you actually have to evict somebody for a non-payment, for example, or for otherwise breaking the lease?
Yeah, so there's a few different eviction options here in New Hampshire. So for non-payment of rent, most everybody is under a 7-day elimination period. If you accept subsidized housing, or you have a government subsidized loan, so you have an FHA loan, you do have to do a 30-day notice for them to be able to cure that eviction. Now, somebody can cure an eviction during that notice period 3 times. The 4th time, you can continue it in the courts no matter what. So I would say that we probably have kind of your repeat offenders, right? People who aren't paying within that time frame. So we offer payment plans. We try to be flexible. So if somebody cannot pay, on time in full before the 1st, we do give a grace period. If they're still not able to, they might be able to communicate with us in advance so the owners can plan. So we can't get through that payment plan process. They don't cure during the eviction cycle that they have. So that the notice states how long they have to cure that eviction, to pay that amount in full. Then we go to court. So getting a court date, sorry, you get all the office noise today. Getting a court date is the fun part, because once you notify the courts that this person has not cured their default, they're in default of their eviction notice and default demand for rent. That's what it's called. So you send that to the courts, and actually you send it to the sheriff here in New Hampshire, and the sheriff goes and knocks on their door and lets them know that, hey, your landlord has said that you have not paid your rent. Here is the documentation that they've shown that they've attempted to collect rent from you, and they require them to respond to the courts. So they can choose to not respond to the court. That's an automatic judgment in the landlord's favor. Or I think has like 7 days to reply to the courts to request a court hearing. And that, again, can take some time. So we're waiting on the courts to put us on the schedule. So we might already be 2-3 weeks out of when they failed to pay during the elimination period. And then we're waiting on the courts to schedule. Here in Manchester, it takes a good amount of time. Your smaller towns, they'll put you on the schedule much quicker. So Manchester, we're like a 4 to 6 week wait time between when they haven't cured that demand and to an actual court date in front of a judge. As long as you have your ducks in the row, that tenant can still pay in full at court right there and cure that eviction. So they can say, I have this assistance program, and the court will take that into consideration and might not rule in the landlord's favor. We do a lot of pay to stays as well. I call them like pay to stay agreements, where we'll write something up with the tenant to present to the judge, where the tenant agrees to make certain payments. The landlord says, hey, if you make these payments, you get to stay. And if they fail to make a payment, then you can request the writ of service. So it's not, I'd say it's really balanced. It's not fast. Some out-of-state landlords might disagree. They might say, that's amazing timing in New Hampshire. You guys could be 8 weeks in front of a judge. Worst case, it is absolutely a process that I recommend. We use an attorney through it, or just be really meticulous, making sure that you're using the county's paperwork, making sure that you're documenting everything that you can on your end. And really just in general, we try to be communicative with the tenants. Like ultimately, I don't know a landlord that doesn't want money over possession. And that's what we go for. It's just trying to approach them as real life humans and saying, how can we make sure that we don't have to evict you for non-payment? This is something we can avoid and try to avoid it until, it's ultimately we're not getting money.
Of course, the best way ultimately to reduce the number of evictions is to screen tenants very well up front and have an airtight lease, both of which we know you do. So let's wrap it up with that. Brittany Ping of Ledgeview Commercial, outstanding property management company. Thanks for joining us. here at Porcupine Real Estate, and let's see you soon in another video.
Awesome.